Rachel Pratt was born in country Victoria. She was the 9th child in a sheep farmer's family. She went on to become a nurse at the Royal Women's Hospital in Melbourne, specialising in women and children. But in 1915, she went to World War I as an army nurse, taking care of badly wounded men and dying men. She was 41 at the time. What inspired her to do such a thing? Rachel Pratt was born in Mumbanar in Victoria in 1874. She attended the local state school, then worked on the family farm. When she was 34, Rachel decided to become a nurse. In 1912, she started work at the Royal Women's Hospital in Melbourne, until she enlisted in the Australian Army Nursing Service in May 1915.
Rachel Pratt enlists in the Australian Army Nursing Service within a week, probably, of the news of Gallipoli coming out. The casualty lists have reached the newspapers. Her response to that is to go and enlist for service straight away.
Rachel was initially posted to the 3rd Australian General Hospital in Britain. Then she moved to the Greek island of Lemnos. Lemnos is just across the water from Gallipoli in Turkey, and this is where many of the wounded soldiers were brought.
It is shocking to people when the casualties start coming back. Not just the sheer volume of them, but the kinds of wounds they have. The violence is in front of you in a shattered body. And then there's another one and another one and another one. And all they can do is keep up.
Rachel described the scene in her diary.
Things were in rather a state of chaos when the wounded began to arrive. Their dressings, which had been applied on the hospital ships, were saturated and covered in flies. Dysentery was a scourge on the island. Many of the wounded fell prey to the disease. The cold weather brought frostbitten patients. It was pitiable to see gangrened feet.
From Gallipoli, Rachel was transferred to Egypt to look after men wounded in the Sinai and in Palestine. It was pretty safe there. Then in April 1917, she moved across to France, to a town only a few kilometres from the Western Front and close to the enemy. Australians were fighting some of the biggest battles of the war there, and ambulances were working overtime bringing in the wounded for urgent treatment. This time she was attached to what was called the 1st Australian Casualty Clearing Station.
It's not a hospital, it's a clearing station. So we are getting men out as quickly as we can, triaging men to work out we can get rid of those ones, they can go back for treatment. These guys need stabilising, we will care for them here, get them as far away from the battlefield to better medical treatment as soon as possible.
In a letter to a Victorian newspaper, Rachel wrote,
I have charge of a dressing ward and small theatre. We do over 200 dressings daily. The sisters are working dreadfully hard, as I have worked in the past.
In July 1917, there was a big raid by German aeroplanes and many bombs were dropped on the clearing station for wounded soldiers. There's a lot of damage and many people wounded, including medical staff and patients.
She obviously is one of these staff members who is up all through the night, organising people, treating people, doing what she can, and then she herself becomes a casualty 2 nights later.
Rachel was struck by flying shrapnel when another bomb exploded near the tent where she was working.
She has a massive wound that perforates her lung, very badly wounds her shoulder.
Despite her wound, Rachel kept nursing patients until finally she collapsed. Her bravery is almost beyond belief. The next day, Rachel was promoted to the rank of sister and awarded a military medal by the commander of the British and Empire Army, Sir Douglas Haig. In those days, Australia was part of the British Empire.
General Sir William Birdwood wrote, I write to tell you how really pleased I am to see that you have been awarded the military medal in recognition of your courageous behaviour and devotion to duty during the bombing of your hospital. I well know the value of the fine example on such occasions and have learnt of the presence of mind which you displayed. I congratulate you most heartily on the honour which you have so fully deserved. I do hope you are well again now, as I know one of the bombs wounded you.
Rachel was the first Australian nurse wounded in the course of her duties, the first awarded the military medal for bravery in the field. and the first of only 8 nurses awarded that medal during the whole of the First World War.
It takes her about 3 months to recover, and by that time they've awarded her the military medal and they've arranged her investiture by King George V at Buckingham Palace.
Rachel recovered enough to return to duty at army nursing centres in England until the end of the war.
Rachel Pratt wrote home about her wound, and I think this sums her up because she's not at all worried about what's happened to her. She writes, "As you know, I was wounded through the right shoulder and lung, and the piece of shrapnel has not been removed, for an operation for that purpose was unsuccessful. It's not causing me any inconvenience, and it's better to leave well enough alone."
Back in Melbourne after the war, Rachel started a rest home in East Malvern for returning servicemen. During this time, she became very ill herself, and she died in 1954 from chronic bronchitis due to the remaining shrapnel in her lung. In her last years, Rachel also experienced mental illness, which was possibly caused by her First World War experiences. In those days, the condition was called shell shock. Today, it's known as post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. So there you have it. Rachel Pratt was a remarkable Australian. She was a highly qualified nurse specialising in women and children's health. Then she switched to become an army nurse, taking care of badly wounded men. Remember, apart from her medical skills, she was awarded a military medal for bravery on the Western Front. A military medal for bravery. Very few women were given that honour. I told you, she was remarkable.